I'm Tanzanian. I was born here, and I am extremely patriotic, right? And I come from a long line of mixed Arabs, Indians, Persians, Iraqis, a whole mix of uroyo. But nevertheless, I am Tanzanian. So are my parents, my grandparents. We have been here for over 100 years. Arguably, even before Tanzania was Tanzania. However, despite being Tanzanian and spending my formative teenage years here, I actually grew up in the Middle East. Now, has anyone here visited Dubai, Qatar, Oman? Any hands? If you've been there, you would know how culturally diverse the Middle East is. Now, where I grew up, there weren't a lot of East Africans. There were so many Filipinos, Bangladeshis, Indians, Egyptians, and as a child, I was surrounded by them. I was surrounded by all of this amazing, diverse culture. So as a child, naturally, I assimilated. I learned to have rice in the morning with my Filipino friends, and I'd have butter naan and butter chicken in the evening with my Indian friends. That is the fun part of diversity, is it not? But despite all of this, despite being the only Tanzanian in my friend group, that patriotism, that love that I had for my country, that never faded. I looked forward to coming here for my summers and seeing my family. Mingling with my cousins and having ugali, celebrating Eid. So you can imagine the shock that I had when I moved back here as a teenager, only to realize that belonging here wasn't so simple. There were these invisible lines that were dividing us amongst ourselves. Do you see this picture here? This is a protest from America. I was there last year for a debate competition, as I am a debater. And one thing about us debaters, when you see us on stage doing what we do, we're fierce, we're sharp. You're gonna think, oh my God, they absolutely hate each other. But the moment that timer ends and we're off the stage, we're friends again. So we would sit together with all of these students from all around the world. We were the Tanzanian delegation. We had students from Spain, Mexico, and obviously a majority of the American students. And we would talk. We would actually learn about each other's cultures, our customs, what was normal in their country and what wasn't normal in ours. Did you guys know that Filipinos eat raw egg with a raw duck inside? That was mind-blowing to me. But that's the fun of culture. Now, while I was there, the African American students spoke very passionately about something. That belonging for them in America wasn't so simple. You see, they expressed that despite being Americans from birth and living there throughout their lives for years and years and years, their parents, their grandparents, they were still treated like outsiders. Belonging for them wasn't simple. So they felt like they didn't belong in America, where they had their own African American culture, their roots. But even if they came to visit Africa, they didn't belong there either, because they didn't understand our culture. They didn't understand our customs. So they felt like out of place. They were in the middle, floating between being Black or being American. Hearing that story from them, it stirred something inside me. Because honestly, I couldn't relate more. I mean, if you flew me out of Tanzania today and you placed me in, I don't know, Iran, I wouldn't fit in. I don't speak Farsi, guys. I don't even speak Indian or anything else. I don't know the cultures, the customs. I'm Tanzanian. This is my home. And this is all I really have. Which made me realize that I have to make it count. So, what are these hidden currents that divide us? What are these invisible lines that keep us disconnected? Psychiatrists call it the colonial mentality. It is the leftovers of the colonial regime throughout Africa and Asia, even South America. You know, Frantz Fanon, a French psychiatrist, he described it as a sort of wearing a mask. We learn to put on the colonizers' cultures, values, customs, and even their ideals of humanity. We put it on as a sort of armor, hoping that it would make us seem more human. Hoping that in the colonizers' eyes, we would be enough. Albert Memmi, in his Discourse on Colonialism, he wrote that the colonizer is never simply, what he is. He is always evolving, always trying to be someone else. That is the problem. Because once we're uncomfortable in our own skin, then who really are we? We lose pieces of ourselves. We lose pieces of our culture. And trust me, this has become so normalized. How many of you guys here studied NECTA? NECTA system, do I see you guys? Oh, I see a couple hands. I studied NECTA. And I remember Form 3 history. We learned that colonization wasn't just about stealing land. It wasn't just about stealing our resources. No, it was something much more important. It was about forcing us to conform, forcing us to assimilate, to let go of the very culture and customs that make us who we are. Colonization works to de-civilize the colonizer, to brutalize him in the true sense of the word, to degrade him and to awaken him to buried instincts, to covetousness, violence, race hatred, and moral relativism. And the result, paradoxically, is that the colonizer, there's a sort of boomerang effect, a regression, a gangrene, a rotting, a deepening of savagery in the very heart of Europe. Aimé Césaire wrote this in 1950. That is the true essence of the colonizer. So often we talk about the victims. We were colonized. We have this inferiority complex. And we look up to the colonizer's mindset as being supreme, superior even. But that is the true essence of it. So there is no power in having a colonizer's mindset, the same way there is no true power in having a colonized mindset. Which brings me to a very crucial part of my speech today. The priority. The priority must be to de-center. To de-center the colonial mindset. So far, I think I've made it clear. When we embrace this colonized feeling inside of us, we feel small, we feel inadequate, and we spend our life chasing an approval that will never come. An approval that is only viable with terms and conditions. The more that we play into these very invisible lines, the more we play into what the colonizer wanted all along. His very strategy: divide, conquer, and rule. As long as we are subconsciously minimized, we will never break free. But you know what the harsh truth is, ladies and gentlemen? The colonial mentality doesn't just shape how we see each other as peers. The most important thing is it shapes how we see ourselves. When you look in the mirror and you start thinking, oh my God, I'm wearing my Indian earrings today. I'm wearing this Arabic attire. People are gonna think weirdly of me. Oh my God, I'm dressed to this. Am I fitting in? That's exactly what they want you to think. They want you to think that your culture should be dismissed. You are playing into these invisible lines. We see it every day. I mean, we prefer light-skinned girls for our sons. We prefer sending our kids to study university abroad because their education is superior, right? We see our children bleaching their skins or straightening their hair to fit into the colonizer standard of beauty. We follow the colonizer standard of intelligence, of relativism. Why? That is the question that I'm leaving with you guys today. As we decenter, we learn something very, very crucial. That the only way for us to put aside this virus, this malware in the mind that has been passed down from generation to generation that continues to affect us in our daily lives, only then do we see our strength. Only then do we diversify, do we uplift each other as Tanzanians, as East Africans, as Africans as a whole. We no longer need to do this whole mainland versus coastal versus light skin versus dark skin. Once we put this behind us, only then will we reach true peace, real unity. Because our strength lies in our diversity. We may no longer be chained in our hands, but does that really matter if our minds are still chained? Does that really matter when we still look at life through the colonizer's lens? Ladies and gentlemen, the priority must be to recenter one another in all skin colors, in all attires, in all surnames. That is the priority. And you know what? You know what I think? I think in today's world, the most radical act that any of us can really do is to stand here in front of everyone and proudly claim that we are Tanzanian, that we are African. And that in itself is enough. And that in itself is our strength, our pride, and our unity. I would like to close this off with a very famous methali, umoja ni nguvu na utengano ni udhaifu. Thank you all.